Hello everyone, this is Professor Vikash Kataria and you are watching lecture of operating system subject code 3630003. This is lecture number 4 and the topic which is going to cover in this lecture is multi-programming operating system. Right? In the last lecture we had discussed what kind of serial processing system, how it works. In that later on we had discussed on batch operating system and we got the knowledge how the batch processing actually works. And to remove the drawback of batch operating system, we have to evaluate the new operating system which is known as multi-programming operating system. So let's have a look what exactly the multi-programming operating system and how it works. So types is 3: multi-programming operating system. So let me tell you about a multi-programming operating system. After the batch operating system, as we already talked about the batch operating system, we have the bunch of jobs. We have to collect related kind of job and makes batch. In that way we have several batches, batch 1, batch 2, batch 3 and so on. Every batch contain multiple jobs and jobs should be related to each other, right? To increase the utilization, to increase the throughput, okay, we need to design a new operating system which can be evaluated number of active programs in primary memory. So in order to achieve this, we need to evaluate new operating system which comes into the picture and known as multi-programming operating system. Okay, so let's have defined the multi-programming is what. After batch operating system, to increase the system throughput and resource utilization, a class of operating system that multiplex resources of computer system among multiple active programs were evaluated. They are first is multitasking, second was multi-programming, and third was multi-user. First is multitasking. So multitasking is what? Task means program, task means a process, sorry, program not, it's a process. An instance of program in execution is called a process. Okay, a multitasking operating system is distinguished by its ability to support the concurrent execution of two or more active processes. Okay, multitasking is usually implemented by maintaining code and data of several processes in memories simultaneously and by multiplexing processor and input output devices among them. So as soon as a program being evaluated, encounters any input output instructions and it needs wait for input output to be completed, the processor switch to another job, right? So multitasking is what exactly? An instance of program in execution is called process. Okay, so program at the time of execution become the process, we already know. Okay, that is the difference between program and process. Program is passive entity and process is an active entity. Process take place into the primary memory. Process have TDS part, text, data and stack part. Program is one kind of passive entity. It takes memory into the hard disk or secondary memory. Okay, so instance of program at the time of execution is called the process. So multitasking refers multiple processes running or executing in the same time into primary memory. This is called multitasking. Okay. So multitasking operating system, a multitasking operating system is distinguished by its ability to support the concurrent execution of two or more active programs or processes. Multitasking is usually implemented by multitasking is usually implemented by maintaining code and data of processes in memory simultaneously. This is important. And also multiplexing processor and input output devices amongst them. So let me describe again. Multitasking means more than one task, more than one process. If concurrent execution, two or more active processes takes memory or comes into the primary memory, this kind of execution is called the multitasking. So an instance of program in execution is called a process, that is I am talking about the single process. And if the same kind of processes by different kind of users comes into the primary memory simultaneously and their execution takes place simultaneously, that means you are performing the concurrent execution. So to its ability to support the concurrent execution of two or more active process, this kind of ability is called the multitasking, right? So multitasking is usually implemented by maintaining code and data. Here I am talking about the processes code and data. Every process has their own text data and stack portion. So every process has its own TDS part, right? So at the time of concurrent execution, concurrent execution, we need to manage all process associated with their own TDS, right? So in order to achieve the concurrent execution, somehow we need to manage every process, we need to manage TDS part of each process. It is also possible that each process requires some resources, maybe input resources and output resources. So somehow we need to manage resources as well. Okay, so this is called multitasking, right? So every process has its own TDS part. At the concurrent execution, we need to manage all processes associated with their own TDS as well as their input output resources. Okay, so this is actually multitasking. The B part is multiprogramming. Multiprogramming means more than one program running by the user at the same time. Okay, the term multiprogramming denotes an operating system that, in addition to support multitasking, provides sophisticated forms of memory protection and enforces concurrency control when process access shared input output devices and files. So multiprogramming is nothing, just it's another term which manage how multitasking will actually takes place into the primary memory. Because as I'm talking about, as I talked about, the multitasking is what, nothing, it's a more than one execution currently running into the primary memory. So every process required some input output device, every process have its own TDS part. So this is called the multitasking, but according to the multiprogramming, we actually perform the multitasking. So this is the term. Multiprogramming is a term denotes an operating system that, in addition to support multitasking, provides sophisticated form of memory protection. Okay, so how the memory will be protected? Because every process has its own TDS, so TDS should be managed by the operating system. There must some policies which protect the TDS part of each process. Process P1 has their own TDS, process P2 has their own TDS. P1 and P2 never be conflict into the primary memory, that should be maintained by the operating system. Okay, user 1 and user 2 also working in the same time into primary memory, so user have its own user area, they are performing their execution in user area 1. User 2 also another user who performing their own task in their own area. So user 1 cannot be conflict to the user 2, right? That should be maintained. That the memory protection, there is one term, memory protection and enforcing concurrency policies, both are managed in the by the operating system, but both are managed in the multiprogramming concept. So multiprogramming, let me define the term multiprogramming. The term multiprogramming denotes an operating system that, in addition to supporting multitasking, providing sophisticated forms of memory protection and enforces concurrency control when process access shared input output devices and files. Multi-programming operating system usually support multi-user. Right, so here is clear-cut definition. The multi-user, what actually does by the multi-programming concept, the concept what actually does by these terms. The term multi-programming denotes an operating system that is in addition to supporting multitasking. Okay, so we need to support multitasking, as I told you in the previous lecture, previous term, multitasking in what kind of activities we have to perform into the multitasking. So in order to support the multitasking, operating system must have this kind of nature. Okay, and also it also provided the sophisticated form of memory protection, because multitasking is only support that the more than one task can be run or execute in simultaneously in the primary memory, but it is not enough. If we allow more than user to make their execution into the primary memory, we have take care about the context of the process also. So the memory protection is very important, and the concurrency control is also another very important for the operating system. So it protect the memory, and it also makes some concurrence control policies by which we can maintain each process TDS. Okay, so data structure of the process never be conflicted by each other. Okay, we have to somehow we need to manage their critical section and apply one by one execution on that section. We never allow more than two process or more than two user to work in the same critical section, right? So this kind of enforcement policies and the memory protection will be managed in the concept of multi-programming. So multi-programming is nothing, it is a term which denotes by the operating system in order to supporting sophisticated form of memory protection and enforces concurrency control policies. So anytime if more than one process shared input output devices or files, right, so multi-programming concept applied and manage input devices, output devices and any resources, maybe their files also. So somehow we need to manage the share input output devices and files and folders. Okay, and memory protection and enforcement policies for concurrency control. These things comes into the category of multi-programming. Third one, multi-users. So multi-user operating system provide facility for maintenance of individual user environment, required user authentication for security and protection, and provide per user resources uses accounting. Multi-user is very simple. More than one user are working simultaneously in with computer system called multi-user system. Okay, so more than one user are working simultaneously. More than one user is working simultaneously with computer system is called multi-user system. Every user has its own user area and they are ready to perform their own task process. Okay, and all process which are executing by multi-user will be managed by operating system. Okay, so operating system must have the capability or ability to provide the support of multi-users. Okay, here is some example. Here is example of multi-user OS, Linux, Unix, Mac, etc. These are the example of multi-user operating system. Okay, so I hope you're clear, guys. More than one user is working simultaneously with computer system called multi-user system. That means more than one user can interact with the operating system simultaneously. They can perform their own tasks simultaneously into the primary memory. Every user have its own user area and they perform their own task in their own area. Okay, so we have multiple users. Every users have its own U area. Every user have its own ID, UID, which is known as UID, and operating system identify every user to its UID based on their UID. Okay, so all process which are executing by the multi users will be managed by the operating system. Okay, here is some example: Linux, Unix and Mac. These are example of multi-user operating system, right? So in general, multi-programming implies multitasking, but multitasking does not imply multi-programming. Multitasking is one of the mechanisms that a multi-programming operating system employs in managing the totality of computer system resources. Okay, but the multi-programming with two programs may be run in simultaneously into the primary memory. Okay, so here is important terms. Let me write here. In general, multi-programming implies multitasking, but multitasking does not imply multi-programming. That means vice versa is not true. Multi-programming implies multitasking, but multitasking does not implies multi-programming. So multitasking is one of the mechanisms that a multi-programming operating system employs in managing the totality of computer system resources. Okay, so in general, multi-programming implies multitasking, but multitasking does not imply multi-programming. So multitasking is nothing, just one kind of mechanisms that multi-programming operating system employs in managing the totality of computer system resources, right? Let's have some advantage of multi-programming operating system. First is better throughput. It is clear if more than one user can work simultaneously, it's quite possible the utilization of the CPU will be better. So number of jobs executed during a given period of time increases. This is called, there is better throughput. If the number of tasks, number of process executed during given period of time, this is called throughput time. Okay, so if we want to increase the throughput, we have to execute number of jobs during a given period of time. If it increases, that means throughput directly increases. So throughput is proportional to execution of concurrent execution of number of jobs. If we increase the number of jobs, throughput directly proportional, that means it will also increase, right? So through the multi-programming, there is better throughput as compared to batch or serial. Second is response time. Response time is what? The time between submission of request and production of first response from CPU. Okay, so we allocate our jobs. Job will be settled into the job queue. It is ready for the execution, but the processor at the time in which the processor reply or responds to the process, that time is known as response time. So time between submission of request and production of first response from CPU is called response time, right? In multi-programming system, the response time is lower. There is also disadvantage of multi-programming system. First is large memory. There is very simple meanings. If multiple users have the capability to perform their own task on their job into the primary memory, that means primary memory must be large. If we do not have large primary memory, we cannot get better throughput, we cannot get better utilization of the CPU. So large memory, it's become the drawback of multi-programming. If we have large memory, that is enough. If we do not have, that is the problem of multi-programming. So the main memory should be large enough to accommodate many programs at the same time. Okay, so the main memory should be large enough to accommodate many programs at same time, right? This is first drawback of multi-programming. Second is scheduling. Single job can be managed very easily, but we have number of jobs in primary memory. Somehow it is to be tough to schedule every process or every jobs. Okay, so we need to enforce some scheduling policies, that is extra effort performed by the expert or some set of programs. So some mechanisms is needed to decide which job should be brought from disk to main memory. Similarly, scheduling is also needed to decide which program in the main memory is allocated to the CPU first. Okay, so in multiprogramming, as already we talked about, we have different process, different jobs into the primary memory, but the allocation of CPU should be very wisely. Okay, every process demanding the CPU to execute themselves, but we cannot allocate CPU at the same time to all the process. So somehow we have to enforce some scheduling policies. Somehow we need to enforce some policies according to the allocation of the CPU, right? So scheduling is very tough in multiprogramming. Okay, so let me discuss here. Some mechanisms is needed to decide which job should be brought from disk to main memory. So how it will be decided and who will decide? Okay, first thing is who will decide which job should be brought from disk to main memory and who will carry it, right? This is very important decision. Similarly, scheduling is also needed to decide which program in the main memory is allocated to the CPU first. Such scheduling is required so that a proper mix of input output and CPU bound jobs are present in memory for effective utilization of CPU, right? So as I told you, there should be some mechanisms. We required some mechanisms which decide which job should be carried or brought from disk to main memory, right? So in order to decide these things or these policies, we have some policies, right? Who will schedule the process from disk to primary memory and who will perform this task vice versa also. Sometimes we need to swap memory from primary memory to hard disk also. So in order to perform the swap in and swap out process, somehow we have some policies, scheduling algorithms. So similarly, scheduling is also needed to decide which program in the main memory is allocated to the CPU, because we have several programs into the memory. Which program allocated to the CPU first? Okay, so we have to make some priority to the program or process, which how the CPU will be allocated to each and every process. Simple term, that is simple terms, right? We have single CPU and we have number of processes, we have number of programs currently executing into the primary memory. So we have some policies. We should make some policies by which we can allocate CPU wisely to every process, okay, so that we can get the better or effective utilization of the CPU. Okay, so scheduling is quite tough in multiprogramming system. Now third is memory protection. That is also a very essential terms. So if more than one process currently taking place into the primary memory, we need to manage the protection of the jobs also. As I told you that every process have their own TDS, every process have text region, data region, stack region. Data region maintain the entire data structure of the process. Text region maintain the entire text part or code part of the process, and stack region will maintain by all the functions layer, right? So stack layer contain many layers, right? So memory protection is very required. We have to protect every TDS of each and every process, right? So a protection mechanisms should be used so that the programs in a particular area of memory are prevented from changing information or instruction of other programs, right? So that is requirement. If suppose process wants to change their data structure, process wants to change their text region, maybe they want to change their functions also, so protection should be there, right? So protection is nothing, just mechanisms should be used so that programs in a particular area of memory are prevented from changing information or instruction of the other program, right? And protection is important because, as I told you, every process has its own TDS. T stand for text part of process, will maintain all the text or code. D stand for the data structure of process, that has to be protected by the operating system. And S stand for here stack region, stack portion of process, so it manage all text part. D manage the entire data structure part, and stack will maintain entire functions layers, right? So all three regions should be protected by the operating system. These all three regions should be protected by the operating system. That's why memory protection is required, because text part of the process may be takes place in primary memory, D part may be somewhere else into primary memory, and stack part will be situated at somewhere else into the primary memory. So these all three regions should be protected, and these all three memory region of primary memory, right? So somehow we need to maintain the protection policies. So this is again quite challenging for the multi-programming system, right? In the next lecture we will discuss the multi-processor operating system. Thank you.